Today's webinar is called Advertising Government Documents, and I'm really excited to bring in two North Carolinians, Beth Kalar and Elizabeth Garner. And Beth has been the coordinator of government information at Randall Library in at UNC Wilmington for 5 years. She received her BA in history and her MS in accountancy from UNC Wilmington and her MLS from NC Central. Elizabeth has been the library specialist for government resources at Randall Library at UNC Wilmington for 5 years as well. She received her BA in history from UNC Wilmington in May 2000 and her MLS from NC Central in 2010.
Hi, I'm Beth Kaler, and with me is
Elizabeth Garner.
So we're going to talk about the efforts that we've made to sort of advertise our collections. Randall Library has been in the FW program since 1968. We're a very large selective depository. We also have a North Carolina collection, and we have a nuclear regulatory collection. We were a reading room for the Brunswick steam plant, and we still have those materials as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to start.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'll talk a little bit about how we have used Little Ben from the GPO marketing resources with our collection, and to kind of start us off.
We love Little Ben.
Yeah, he's the best. Okay, so this is an example of what we've used Little Ben here recently. He is out on top of our topographical map cases right now. And we've used several of the pocket constitutions that we got from GPO to use as a display for Constitution Day this year. And actually, as of this morning, half of those are gone. So students are taking those and using those, which we're really happy about. And we've also used Little Ben in the past. We used him, I think, in 2016. We coordinated some efforts with other librarians we work with here in the building. We had a larger display downstairs, so we've used him in the past for other things as well. I also use Little Ben on the other side of our map cases. I will pull several items that we have from our federal and state collection and put them out on display. Right now, that display you see is currently facing several tables where students study at on a regular basis, so they can see these items pretty much front and center. And we do this, we'll switch these out maybe once or twice a semester just to change it up. And here we have a glass, sort of a display case that we also pull different items out from the collection. This is one that we did a farm to table resources display a few years ago, and I actually utilized a student worker that I had. I asked her if she wanted to go out into the collection and choose some items that she thought looked interesting. So she chose some of the agriculture items that we have, again, both from the federal and state collection, and we use those for a display. We also have an Instagram and a Twitter social media presence, and it's called DubDocs, DUBDOCS. UNCW is affectionately known as the Dub. So we created an account, and I try to regularly update that with different items that we have in the collection. This was one that we received. It's an electronic item, but it does center on issues that we face here in the state. Obviously, this is an issue nationwide, but it did focus on the western part of our state. So I thought this was a good resource to highlight. And I think this was another one that I highlighted too, the e-resource that we had on the Mueller investigation. So that was pretty timely in itself. I'll also like to share things to Facebook department pages. For instance, this is an item, I think I took a picture of an item that we had out in the collection to the UNCW History Department, their Facebook page. I like to share things with them once in a while that I think might be pertinent to either their research or their students' research. For example, I had a history professor that I used to work with. She came one day to government documents and asked if we specifically had any information on the use of medicine in World War One. And we did. There was one or two things that I did find for her in the collection. She had a student doing some research on that. So I think this is pretty helpful, trying to share information this way. We also did a display on the first floor of Randall Library, which is this particular area is in a pretty thoroughfare, if you want to call it, of the library. And you can see there on the shelves, it was the 100th anniversary of the National Park Service. So we pulled several items from the collection that we have in government documents to help highlight that anniversary. And it was put on display with the, I think, the new and popular section in Randall Library. So again, a lot of students pass by this area. And we also have a specific area for us in government documents. It's a wall right near our offices, which is great because it also faces several of the group study rooms, and tons of students pass by this wall every day. So they should be looking at it or at least notice it as they walk by. This particular display I did pulled items that we had to highlighting North Carolina state parks, and we had more than I actually realized in our collection. So this was kind of neat to share those resources. Again, this was something else that we did with Constitution Week. We pulled out the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and might be the Articles of Confederation, one of those. And then the bottom one in the middle, the more colorful one, was showed how the country voted in every presidential election, I think it was, since the first one, whether it was Democrat or Republican, and like what the ratio was. So I wanted to highlight that. This was another display case that we had done. It was highlighting Hispanic Heritage Month. Different resources that we had for that as well. And this is, again, just another example of different resources we use. This one was for career information, especially the occupational outlook. I'm going to switch it back over to Beth Kaler.
Thanks, Elizabeth. One of the things that I do is something we call Government Documents of the Month. The way we're structured in Randall Library is we have liaison librarians, and every department has a primary contact in the library. And so what I do is I create these, and then I send them out to all the librarians, and if they, of course, think they're relevant, they send them on to their faculty. I also will do these on request. I try not to do them too often. Generally, it's once a month. Often it's 2 or 3. So it helps, advertise a particular collection or a particular document, or if we're just sort of trying to make a department, aware of the fact that we have a government documents collection. I also send them directly to library staff. So if I find an item that, for example, the Mueller report, when we got that was relevant and current, I sent one to the library staff just to let them know that we do have it. It actually works really well. We get a lot of questions after we send those out, and so it's very helpful. Here's so they always look the same, so it's really easy to create them because I have this template in my email. So, for example, this is one that is resources from the Library of Congress, but was focusing on film. We have a large film studies program here. So I tell what the documents are, and then also if there are other things, I will also, in the upper right corner, will add a couple of more resources that I think are useful. Thomas Jefferson. This was sort of an interesting, document that came in, this war surgery in Afghanistan and Iraq. And so we wanted to highlight that to some of our nursing students. Department of Defense documents, but we share those with our nursing liaison. Another one, foreign policy. This was one that a librarian requested just to highlight a couple of things for a particular faculty member. One thing we do is we try to be really creative with signage. We have a banner that a previous librarian created, Jamie Hayes, you may know her from video. So the banner sort of shows people where the collection is. We've recently had some construction in the library, and so the restrooms were built right in front of our offices, a new large restroom. And so when you get to the top of the stairs and turn right now, it's just a blue wall. So we are trying to figure out ways that we can make students more aware that we're still there. We've just moved down a little bit. So we do that with a monitor, and we rotate images. And these are just a few examples of just trying to make students aware of what government documents are, where they are, and what we, things that we think are interesting that we're doing that has generated a lot of attention is our collaboration with local schools. So New Hanover County has had a program for a good number of years where we visit the local high school seniors and talk about libraries, and we talk about them together. So there's somebody from our community college, somebody from the public library, and somebody from UNCW. And we talk about the libraries, what they offer, how we're different, just to make sure that no matter what somebody's working on, that they know that all libraries are here to help them and know which library, is most suited to what they're working on. But we do, do this on a semester basis, so we go twice a year. And now we talk about government documents too while we're there, because we hadn't done that. But it's a really interesting collection, and we talk about, hearings and committee prints and things that students hear about but are not aware that they can actually get. And that has been really beneficial to us, and we've had high school students come in and check out some of our documents. The last thing that we're doing with the local schools is we've planned a Day with Documents workshop. We have invited teachers and librarians from high schools and middle schools in the surrounding counties. Randall Library has a southeastern North Carolina collection that focuses on the surrounding 8 counties, and that was our target for this. And that's going to be October 11th. And we've got a good number of teachers and librarians planning to attend. And we're going to do a session on federal documents, one on North Carolina documents. We're actually going to work with special collections to do a primary source exercise with them to show, how we can help them create these and how we can help them find the sources for these. The comments I've gotten from people who've registered, it's pretty exciting. We had done this in the past, but had not done it in several years, and so we're trying to start it again. Looking forward to that, bringing these people in our community in. We've also redesigned our web page.
There were a couple of questions I was just gonna
Sure.
that go with what you were talking about before. I don't know if you wanted to address them now or. So there's one. How often do you change? So this was with the display cases. How often you change items from your display case, and then who designs and prints the posters were the 2 questions.
So we try to change them a couple of times a semester, and we just sort of, something in the news comes up that we think is, will draw attention. We do that. Elizabeth works with our students, and we ask our student assistants, what ideas they have. So we try to do it about twice a semester. And our posters and everything, we are very fortunate that we have John Crawford, who is our basically our graphic designer. He's our digital and media person, and we give him an idea that this is what we want to do, and he creates really cool posters from that. We're very fortunate we don't do that part. So we have redesigned our webpage now to include on the left side government resources news. So what we try to do is pick things that are current, things that are happening, and actually put them on our webpage. We really hadn't done that in the past, and I'm not really sure why we didn't think of it. But that's another outlet that we have. Further down on the page, this was the snip just at the top, but further down on the page, we also have another spot where we highlight, current like print materials. So we'll put the image and then the title and link it to our catalog. Our next step, the thing that we're working on right now, is we're trying to create a government documents game. We're waiting for our monitor to be moved. We just really want to get students into the collection just so, to be honest, students come upstairs and then they see the docs collection and it looks a little weird because it's different from sort of everything else on the second floor. And so we just want to show them that it is weird, but it's a really cool weird. So on our monitor with the other images, we'll supply a clue to a document. And then the student will go to that section and find it. And once they do, we'll ask them a little question. There'll be a little slip and a pen for them to answer the question. And when they bring it to us, they'll get a prize. So they'll get something that hopefully will sort of encourage them to share the word about it. But it really, again, it's about sort of finding the unexpected in the collections. So that's really what we have. Does anybody have questions or ideas that you would like to share? We're always, looking for ideas as well.
Sometimes it takes a while to get typed in, but I was going to ask you, did you have a lot of luck with people taking constitutions from the Constitution data display?
Yes, we did.
That's good. That's awesome.
Sorry, the image that we had on the slide with Little Ben, and there's, I think, 6 sort of spread out stacks of those constitutions. As of this morning, half of them are gone. So they have been taken by students. And we have a sign in front of it. You don't see it in the slide, but it is out there now. It does say, I think it says free, please take one. So they're taking them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've always wondered if students take them because they have like constitutional law classes or some, a class, and they realize it would be helpful for that.
Right. Again, that display is in the middle, sort of where students study, and they have to walk through there also to get to the group study rooms. So we tried to make it front and center as possible as we could. So I think it's working.
Last year, when Elizabeth did something very similar, I had a student approach me and ask if we had more of those because he had to teach part of his class. It was a political science class, and he wanted to be able to go into that class and give every student in the class a copy of the Constitution.
I love it. That's awesome. I like that kid.
Pretty excited.
The question came in called, do you have a budget for creating displays?
Really don't. So we kind of have to figure out how to do all of this, on very little money. And that's what that's why we do the displays that we can do on top of our map cases and things like that, and update our webpage, the basics. Luckily, when we want to print like a poster or something that comes out of the budget that is for posters and stuff in the library for exhibits. But we as a department don't have a budget, unfortunately. But we're very fortunate that the libraries, help.
And then, is your day with documents a day-long workshop or a few hours after school hours? Or a few after school hours?
Actually, a day long. We're hosting it on the 11th because that's our fall break. But it starts at 9 and ends at 4. Like I said, we're doing a session on federal documents, and then Elizabeth is doing a session on like Ben's Guide and other resources for students. And we have our education librarian who's going to really focus on resources for teachers. And then one of our associate directors is going to do a session on North Carolina documents and all the stuff that's in that collection. Going to talk about the North Carolina House and Senate journals, those things. And we're actually going to take them to our curriculum materials center to show that, we do have more in the way of teacher resources that are available for them to use. We hope that the next one, we're not sure if we're going to do it annually or, every other year, but the next one will focus specifically on resources for history and social sciences teachers.
I was going to say too, this is Elizabeth again. I forgot to mention earlier. I've taken Little Ben to the NCLA conference, the biennial conference, and I'll take pictures of him traveling with me, like in his seatbelt, and I'll put that on our social media, Instagram and Twitter. And then, for instance, when Little Ben and I got to the conference, we went to a session on government documents, and I took a picture of him standing next to the projector and just tried to make it fun and relatable, especially to any students that follow our Instagram page. So that might be another idea some of you could use in the future.
I think I remember you doing that.
I think you were in the room, Linda.
Oh, yeah. I think I have a memory of Little Ben showing up.
I really have to talk up Elizabeth's Instagram page. I have nothing to do with it, but she does such a great job of, sharing resources in a fun way and really making it fun for people who, don't know what GovDocs are, but see it as, can now see that it's really interesting, can be fun.
Great. Do you track how many, what topics you've done or anything like that so you don't repeat things or?
That's a good question. I don't in particular. I just try to use what I think is a varied selection of subjects. Like literally sometimes I'm just in the collection and I'll just get my hands on something and I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. I'll take a picture of the cover and then put it up on the social media sites. We do have a folder. We have a SharePoint site that we use, and we have put some images that we've used in the past in there for marketing items, but I don't specifically keep track of any.
Mhm. And then Mark,
I guess.
yeah, and Mark has a question about kind of related our documents of the month excuse me, our documents of the month drawn from new publications or gems from the previously received collections.
Both. It really, I'm like Elizabeth. It's like when I'm out in the collection and I find something interesting that I like to share, sometimes I'll do them, based on that. And, I kind of look through what comes in, and if something is in, in a box and I think, hey, that's interesting, I'll do it. And Elizabeth, points out some of the new things too that come through and say, hey, this might be a good idea. And again, if one of the liaisons, hears about something and asks, I'll do it, based on whatever kind of, whether collection or, documents that they would like to see me share.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Well, I'll have to, if you want to put in your Instagram handle, I guess you call it, feel free to do that. We can all.
Yes, we can add that to the slides,
Okay.
I think, if you want, or if you want to type it in.
Yeah, sure, just type it in. I can type it in if you want.
It's just DubDocs, DUBDOCS.
Awesome. Yeah, we can all follow you then.
Great.
Great. Awesome. Any other questions or other ideas, things that you've done that you found very popular? I find this really awesome, and I don't work with this kind of thing anymore, but one of my favorite collections was always the sexual disease collections that you might find in human services, just because they were interesting and they're such of a time, but I always wonder if the students would be a little bit taken back by some of that. I don't know, about the contentious collections or something to advertise.
One document that I do tend to share with students whenever we're doing a tour or anything is the North Carolina Liquor Quarterly. They seem really interested in that.
Yeah. Yes, it's those things that kind of catch your eye, and then you can show them the more
I
important
also
things.
share like
Here's the code.
like the one of the patent volumes because they're so big.
Hmm.
So this book that's like 2.5 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
I find that amusing too.
Yeah. Yeah, so Melissa is saying really great display ideas for those of us on a limited budget. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and
uh,
Ben really gets attention too.
Mhm.
So wherever we put him,
well, thank
so
you.
if anybody ever has any ideas or wants to share ideas or discuss ideas, Elizabeth and I like to do that. So please don't hesitate to contact us.
And Jane asked a question about what percent do you collect in paper now?
About 68%.
Mm.
We were as high as 78%, but we're working on reducing that now because now we have a space issue.
Great, and yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people. And I wonder too if you could borrow things from Renee's on this call. She could tell if we could borrow things from the regionals or other libraries, if other depositories, if you wanted to display something that you didn't have.
That's a good idea.
Have like a communal, a traveling GovDocs, North Carolina GovDocs display or something like that. Oh, it's another question. Do you plan displays in advance or whatever strikes you at the moment?
Both.
I think so. Yeah, probably because the Constitution Day would be an example where we try to plan it a little in advance, maybe. Or if I know there's a month coming up, I think what was it, Hispanic Heritage Month, for that could be an example of one that we could do. But a lot of times it's just things I might find in the collection.
Okay, well, join me in thanking Beth and Elizabeth from my former home state of North Carolina. And if you are going to NCLA, look for the Ben, I assume,
Definitely.
because I think that's coming up soon. Great. All right. Thank you so much.